Get ready for sports news and entertainment. All right, here, your 7 minutes with Simmons starts right now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of 7 Minutes with Simmons. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the Toronto Maple Leafs and another playoff exit. The Leafs fall to the Panthers in Game 7, 6-1. Finalizing their 2025 playoff run. That is it for the Toronto Maple Leafs and potentially it for the Toronto Maple Leafs in this era. What a terrible year in the playoffs. Just a brutal performance. They go up 2-0 over the Panthers in the first two games at home. They fly to Tampa Bay. They fly to Florida and lay an egg in Game 4, come back for Game 5. Which was one of the worst hockey games I think anybody has seen in Toronto until Game 7. They go back to Florida for Game 6, a very competitive one. They win 2-0, Joseph Wall with the shutout, and then they come back home and get absolutely trounced, booed off the ice, totally dominated, and Florida controls the pace of play. I was there for Game 7. In Toronto, one of the worst hockey games I've ever seen. I wanted to throw my jersey over the glass. Like, it was awful. Booing like I've never heard it before at the Scotiabank Center. Once was the Air Canada Center. I've been a Leafs fan for almost 18 years now. I think I probably went to my first game when I was 4 years old. I've never heard booing like that before. It was just awful. And, Toronto played hockey for the first half, I guess you could say the first period or so, 13 minutes at the end of that first period, they kind of showed up after getting hemmed in their zone for pretty much 7 minutes straight to start that hockey game. And it was just almost impossible to watch. So a couple of things we're going to run through here on this episode. Mitch Marner on his way out. Auston Matthews just with terrible goal production in the playoffs. I want to jump into the roster differentiation between these two teams, Florida and Toronto, both built entirely differently. And I think that's a huge reason for the Leafs' struggles, both in the playoffs and also with their goal production this year and in previous years in the playoffs. We're going to talk about Brendan Shanahan a little bit. Is it time for them to move on from their president and commander-in-chief? We'll give that a look. And then the bottom line, what needs to change in Toronto? Let's get right back to the top of the list. It's Mitch Marner, potentially on his way out. Another poor performance. Well, not exactly poor. On paper, he had a relatively successful playoff run, second in production only to William Nylander. Nylander scoring 6 goals. I think it was Marner down at about 3 on the playoffs. Just didn't have the kind of powerful production that I think Leafs Nation was expecting. On paper, he was solid, but he didn't look to be solid. He didn't really make that kind of difference in the playoffs. And for that reason, everybody, including myself, is frustrated with number 16 in the blue and white. He could most definitely be on his way out. Supposedly received a huge 8-year extension offer midway through this season and turned it down. If that is not evidence of a superstar on their way out, I don't know what else is. So bye-bye Mitch Marner. And for the superstar who will stay in town, Auston Matthews has got to figure it out. Something is going on with this guy in the playoffs. He scored 3 goals all throughout those 2 rounds. Just terrible. Like, one in a must-win series against the Florida Panthers. You'd think he'd show up a lot more polished than that for this caliber of a series. His goal production gets cut in half come playoff time. It's something like 20 goals in 60-something playoff games. That's equivalent to a 27-goal regular season for Matthews, which would be his worst to date, I believe. You got to check the stats on that one, but I'm going to go ahead and say that one of his worst on his career, if those are the numbers that he keeps producing in the playoffs. Just can't get it done. And then this back injury, goes to Germany, comes back. The team throws him back out there, and he puts up a, final third of the season that's just terrible. He's got the effort, he's out there competing, just doesn't look like the same guy, and something has to change there. So hopefully Matthews can get healthy in the offseason. And the big one I want to talk about is the roster differentiation here, seeing as we only got 7 minutes. Florida, built from the back out, so strong defensively. They got a great goaltender, gritty forwards. The salary cap is what really interests me. You take a look at this. Barkov at 10, Kachuk at 9.5, Reinhardt at 8, and then you got Bennett, Lundell, Verhaeghe, and Marchand all in between that 3 to 5 range. The money is spread out, and the team is clearly performing better. I mean, now they go back to the Eastern Conference Finals. Who knows? Maybe back to the Stanley Cup Finals. The Leafs, 4 forwards getting paid over $10 million. Florida's got 1 guy making $10 million. The Leafs got 4 forwards getting paid over 10. The next highest paid, Max Domi, at 3.7. They've got to get those guys that fill up the corner and the neutral zone, as opposed to just filling up the net. Something's got to change there, and I think it starts with goodbye Mitch Marner and goodbye John Tavares. And one final thing, we take a look at the upper management, the executive changes. Brendan Shanahan in charge since 2014. His contract is up on June 30th. Is it time to move on? And I've heard through the grapevine and also through some articles online, the Leafs have granted permission to the New York Islanders to speak to Shanahan regarding an opening in their front office. Very interesting stuff happening there. Marc Bergevin and Matteau Darchet also in the mix for that job, but Shanahan is the target for the Islanders. He could be brought in to replace Lou Lamoriello, once working underneath Shanahan. So an interesting storyline there, but the bottom line, something has to change in Toronto. I think it starts with Marner, Tavares, gone, and maybe a couple others. Start bringing in those gritty guys that can get in the corner and really get it done come playoff time. If you agree, let me know in the comment section down below. That is it for your first episode. My name's Christian Simmons. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. That was 7 minutes with Simmons. We'll see you next time.